Hello everybody, Mannix here. We're going to be doing a quick look at a brief overview of the old model Cold Steel AK-47 with the Ultralock with the G10 handle scales right here. Now I know the old model Recon 1 right here, which I just did a review of, used to come in the FRN handle scales, and later they upgraded or changed, depending on how you want to see that, to the G10 handle scales right here. And then after that, they changed to the new model with the triad lock that we're more used to with the AUS 8A blade steel. From there, upgrading to the CTS-BD1, and then the S35BN. This one, I'm not familiar with an FRN handle. I don't think there ever was, but there was an aluminum handle version of this knife back in the past. I used to have one, and I did a review on one. You are free to go watch that video. But I thought I'd just do a quick overview of this knife. Not really going to call it a full in-depth review because it's weird doing reviews of old discontinued knives that they already updated, they already made changes to. Because if I critique something and say, I wish they did this, I wish they changed that, well, guess what? Chances are they already did on their newer model, so it's kind of redundant to even mention it. So I figured this would just be a look at, because I'm collecting retro old school cold steel knives. This happens to be part of the collection. Let's get with the specs either way. Overall length is 9.25 inches, the same as the old model Recon 1. Blade length being 3.5 inches instead of the 4-inch Recon 1. Handle length 5.75 inches, including the pommel right here. We'll talk about that in a minute. And it weighs in at 6.54 ounces, just 0.14 ounces less than the Recon 1 according to my scale. We have skeletonized flush-mounted stainless steel liners, and there you can see they're really, really skeletonized. Sorry, didn't clean this in a long time. Skeletonizing your liners is kind of a fad. You know, some people say every ounce counts, and yeah, if you're backpacking, you have so many things, and you're absolutely exhausted, you're trudging through the mountains, yeah, you're going to notice each ounce. But generally speaking, everyday carry, even hard use, weight doesn't really matter that much, guys. We're talking ounces, not pounds. But to some people who are interested in having every single ounce shed off of their knife, then there you go. You'll save maybe 0.2 ounces or so by skeletonizing them. Maybe slightly more, but not a whole lot. You do add cost when you do that, though, because it's another step in the process of manufacturing the knife. The pommel is FRN, or what they called Grivex, which is like their version of Grivery, which is another version or name for FRN, fiberglass reinforced nylon, GRN, glass reinforced nylon, GFN, glass-filled nylon, whatever you want to call it. Essentially, it's glass and plastic melted together, which makes a very strong, durable, cheap, lightweight material. It's absolutely fantastic. So many variants on that type of polymer are used on many, many things, including guns. Maybe not FRN specifically, but glass, plastic mixed together variants on that. Heck yes, the Glock, one of the greatest pistols ever made, that uses that material. So it's pretty strong stuff. Very lightweight, easy to work with, affordable. That's why it's on so many knives, and you know, guns even have variants of it too. Pretty impressive. But I heard reports of it cracking back in the day. This is way back in the day. This is over a decade. This is being filmed in early 2022 right now. I've never personally seen one of these crack before. And again, this is going way back away, so the information got so buried, it's so far gone. But eventually, Cold Steel started selling aluminum, either aluminum or steel pommels separately that you could buy and attach to the old model AK-47s. Later, the newer model, talking a little over a decade ago, I think 2010, 2011, when Cold Steel updated the AK and the Recon 1 with their triad lockback mechanism instead of the Ultralock, as you can see right here, they upgraded to an aluminum pommel. And they ditched the stainless steel liners. They put no liners, they just did straight up G10, which actually turned out to be fine. G10 is extremely strong. The liners are kind of redundant, I'm going to say. They don't really, I mean, they do add strength, but it's a redundant amount of strength. You don't really need it for this style knife, for this style tool. It's not really necessary. You can argue with me if you want, but I don't see why you needed them. They just add weight. They're not necessary, and they probably added cost too. So kudos to Cold Steel for ditching those things. What I will say is I think they added in smoothness, because this feels smoother than the new AK, just slightly, because the phosphorus bronze washers, or whatever style washers that were put on there, are now gliding against steel instead of a polymer. So I will give it that. Stainless steel liners or metal in general is a little bit more slick than polymer, but regardless, as far as strength goes, it's just redundant. I argue, anyway. But either way, yes, it's extremely strong pommel anyway, because that is a strong material. It might have something to do with the two lanyard holes they screwed in here. Maybe someone swung it at something super hard at just the right angle and ended up cracking it a bit. But hey, they offered an upgrade, and then when they upgraded the knife as a whole, upgraded the model entirely, they swapped their material out on that as well. I absolutely love the shape of the blade right here. It reminds me of a bullet. It's called the AK-47. I think it's kind of a gimmicky name, honestly. I wish they went with a different one. But very popular knife, very good knife overall. It's supposed to be like a tactical blade. Despite having a shorter blade than, let's say, the Recon 1 right here. It's 0.5 inches shorter. We have more blade right here, but you have a little bit more handle as well as pommel to deal with on this guy. You can also wave this guy off the pocket with the thumb plate right here, as opposed to the thumb disc that the Recon 1 has, which was sort of an advantage this one had over the Recon 1. Shorter blade and almost the same weight, but the thing is it had a pommel as well as the capability of being waved off the pocket. If you're not used to that, as you are extracting this out of your pocket, tip up, left and right hand carry, by the way, you can snag this at the very end of your pocket and it will open up. Locking mechanism will engage on you as you pull it out, and you'll be somewhere in this position typically. You see 2 finger choils down there. You'll be relatively safe in this position, but I would personally like to scooch up in its main intended conventional position right here. It's very comfortable, very simple design. No jimping or anything up here, but I don't really care that much. Just thought I'd note that right there. You can scooch up to here if you want a little bit more precision work. Your hand will rest in something like that. And then you can do some whittling work or some shaving, or if you're just doing more precise work. If you're opening up a package or something, I usually go into this position with my middle finger as well as thumb on the bolster right there, index finger on the spine. Score the tape or whatever it is like that. So it is a utility-friendly knife despite being so huge. It is a big knife. I consider this a very big knife. Once a knife's blade reaches 4 inches, I consider that to be a large size folder. This is not a 4-inch blade, but we have an oversized handle with a pommel on there, which adds to the length of the knife overall. Again, same overall length as the Recon 1. Despite having a shorter blade, we have more to hold on to. So it's up to you. You know, do you prefer the AK or the Recon 1 for tactical or defensive use? You don't necessarily need all this blade, because think about it. If you want that extra 0.5 inches, that's assuming you actually want to use this extra 0.5 inches of edge on the knife when you're doing a cut or defending yourself or anything like that. You still have the reach right here. In fact, even if you only had like 2 inches of edge to work with, you could still do a lot of damage with that. But I will prefer 3.5 inches over 2 inches, just saying. You still have a lot of reach to work with right here, and then you have a quote-unquote legal blade right here, because a lot of places don't allow 3.5-inch blades to be concealed carried. Not that I really care, because I prefer to open carry. I like having a pocket clip. It's easier to extract. You have quite a bit poking out right there. It looks like an odd device is in your pocket. Some people may see that as a knife or some kind of weapon. Keep that in mind. We do have the Tough X coating on here, just like all the AKs, all the Recon 1s, until they started making the versions without the coating. It's basically Teflon. It wears pretty readily. Despite this knife being super old, it must be at least 15 years old or so, probably older. The wear isn't too bad, actually. Some of these wear really quickly. I don't know what people are doing with their knives that make them wear so fast, but this one's still held up pretty well. So this, in comparison to the new AKs, this one's almost the exact same shape. We have some slight differences in the cutouts right here, but the shape's very similar. It's not quite as dramatic of a difference when you're talking about the old Recon 1 with the new Recon 1. However, functionally speaking, we have stainless steel liners in here instead of no liners at all. An FRN pommel, which is not going to be as good as the metal pommel the new one has. And then we have the Ultra Lock instead of the Triad Lock, which is going to be arguable. I'm going to say this one's faster, but I'm going to argue the Triad Lock is a little bit stronger. Not really a big deal, though. They're both very similar knives. I prefer the Ultra Lock. I just think the side actuating locking mechanism is a little bit more fun to play with. You know, easier. There's less tension on the knife because you can completely relieve it without touching the blade at all, versus the Triad Lock or any lockback style mechanism where you have to use 2 hands to close the knife as a whole. So there is that. However, the knife is very similar. Until they upgraded their blade steel, these both had AUS 8A. This is an AUS 8A blade steel, which is comparable to 8CR13 MOV with a little bit more durability, a little bit more corrosion resistance. It's a very similar blade steel, though. It sharpens fast, gets dull fast, but again, once it's dull, you can fix it back up very quickly, which is what I like about the steel. And it keeps costs down, too. It's very, very affordable, for sure. There's not a whole lot else to say. It's a tactical folder without having too long of a blade, so you can consider it a legal knife, but it deploys very quickly because not only the Ultra Lock has less friction on it, so you can flick it out very fast, and it is strong enough. It's a very strong locking mechanism, but you can also wave it off of your pocket. If you practice with it, you can whip the blade out without even touching the blade whatsoever. That's pretty impressive. And then, of course, we have the pommel right here for non-lethal damage if you had to get somebody off you, or unfortunately we're in a situation like that. You can smack someone in the side of the knee or something. You can do a lot of damage, bring them down. Yeah, it's handy to have that. And then in emergency situations, you had to break glass or something like that. This might work for that. I don't think the tip is acute enough. I haven't tested it. I haven't seen tests. I don't know if it's really a glass breaker. It's not intended to be. It's more a non-lethal defensive tool more so than a glass breaker. So, but maybe you could get it to work in a pinch. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. It's cool. It's a really, really cool knife. It's very cool for anyone who loves retro cold steel knives or old school cold steel knives, whatever you want to call them. Again, very similar to the new AK, but we just have a different locking mechanism right there with some minor differences overall. So that's it. That is the old model AK-47. Let's just put this bad boy right next to the old model Recon 1. I do not have the old model American Lawman. However, I don't really care that much because that model is almost the exact same thing, actually, as the newer model American Lawman. But if I stumble upon one, I may get one eventually. So, very cool knives right here. If you stumble upon these guys, they're going to be around the $100 mark if they're in this condition, which I would consider good. Lockup is still good. Edge is still good. Doesn't have too much wear on it. It is worn and used, obviously, but it's still totally functional. But if you find these brand new, you're going to pay anywhere from $200 to $250, depending on whatever anyone wants to ask for these. These are going up in price. They're becoming more collectible. More are getting lost. More are getting destroyed. Which is very unfortunate. So these are only going to get more expensive, I predict. I don't see these dropping down in price anytime soon. And especially considering Cold Steel lost their patent for, or lost the use of the patent, or whatever the story was, I can't even remember. They were no longer allowed to use this locking mechanism anymore. I don't think. Again, I don't know what the whole story is. But Benchmade was like, hey, that's ours. From what I remember, I could be completely wrong on that story there. So if you know the correct answer and I am incorrect, please comment below. Tell me that I am a stupid head. I was completely wrong about that. But that's what I heard. They were no longer allowed to use this, so they stopped using it. I like it a lot, though. I like the sort of industrial, unfinished look it has with that flathead screw right there. Now, this one doesn't. As far as I know, maybe I need a screwdriver to actually do it. I don't know why you would want to do that, but some of these can rotate. This one doesn't rotate at all as far as I know, but this Recon 1 I have does. You can see the top piece of the flathead's pointing to the left. But when I use my fingers, easily just point to the right, it locks in the closed position. I cannot open this knife. It's like a safety mechanism. Rotate it back, then it opens. Pretty cool. It's just a way to, it's just a safety mechanism pretty much. It's like what you would see on an automatic. Not exactly useful. In fact, I would never do that, especially if you were keeping this knife on you for defensive purposes. You may forget, you would try to open it up and it never opens on you, and then you get attacked before you deploy your knife, and that is not a good situation. Even then, even if you knew it was there, it's kind of hard to disengage it. It's slow. It's not a quick switch that's readily next to your thumb or anything. You have to deliberately use both your hands to disengage that. So I wouldn't use it, but just keep in mind some of these Ultralocks do have that function on them. I don't know if this one's just broken or it's stuck. I've never tested it, but I think this one just doesn't move. Maybe I just need to use a screwdriver or something. I'll do it off camera. I didn't bring one with me, sorry. But yeah, really cool knife. Out of the way, Recon 1. We're looking at the AK today.